Hello and welcome to Culture Reset with me, Caroline Kenyon. This time I'm without my pod partner, Juliet Kumar. She's away in Scotland on coaching duties, so I'm going solo. And today we're talking about all things culture in Liverpool, different sort of culture, all the arts, sports, entertainment, events that thrill residents and visitors to this fantastic city. And we'll be hearing how that all relates to how we think and feel and act. In other words, how it impacts on the culture of Liverpool as a place to live, work and play. And we have the very best person to talk to about culture. Welcome, Claire McColgan CBE.
Hello.
So great to have you here.
Thank you.
Could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and your role and what you do?
My name's Claire McColgan. I work for both the City Council and the Combined Authority, and I'm in charge of culture, which has got a very big brief. So that's from everything that you see major event-wise on the street. So, we've got Chinese New Year coming up, all the kind of big events that we've been part of over the years, from Three Queens, Capital of Culture, Giants, all of those are kind of what I'm kind of in charge of, I guess. But also we fund the arts in the city very well. The City Council has always supported that over the last kind of 20 years. So we're responsible for that. And then tourism, destination, changing the kind of perception of this place has been part of my role as well. So it's probably the best role in the city, and I've been doing it for quite a long time.
And regeneration as well, it's linked to that.
It is. I mean, it's a really interesting one with Liverpool, because I think over the last, how long has it been now, since we started to bid for Capital of Culture, so 2003. When did we bid? We started bidding in 2000, so the last 26 years. I think all different administrations that have come in, so all different political administrations that have come in, have really valued culture and thought, okay, that's our USP in this place. We want to encourage tourism. We always were a great city for tourism. You look at cruise liners coming back and all of those great things. But probably 26 years ago, if you'd have told anyone sort of who's listening to this now where the city would be 26 years later, they might have just sort of smiled and thought, that's not going to happen. But because we've been so consistent with that approach and so consistent with our storytelling around this place, I think you can feel the difference. Obviously, it's a generational change in Liverpool, but that's because we've had one story that we've told really consistently and really well for the last 26 years, and that is culture at the heart of regeneration.
And was it the European Capital of Culture that really triggered this revitalising of the arts in Liverpool? Or was it going back even further, where I remember the International Garden Festival was seen as the answer to Liverpool's problems at one point, and that was massive. But then nothing much seemed to happen after that. So do you think it was the Capital of Culture?
I think, yes, but I think your point is really well made. You can do big events in places and then move on, and then nothing has a legacy or a depth to it. And then you move on to do something else that's really exciting. And then it becomes there's no consistency about the narrative. So yes, we did Garden Festival, but then there wasn't the building from that. We didn't carry on with the Garden Festival at that point in time. We didn't make that an annual event, so you'd get, but imagine if we'd done that, imagine how big and huge that would be now. It would probably be one of the moments in the UK where people would come from all over the world to Liverpool. But we didn't, the people who were in charge at that point didn't choose to do that and develop that. And then, of course, you have the Tate and National Museums, 30 years ago by Heseltine being put in the dock as the kind of starting point for the regeneration. I think if I could pinpoint any point, it would be then. But again, that story was quite isolated in terms of the reinvention of the Albert Dock. It wasn't taken in the stories of the people or the great community arts that had happened then. And I think what Capital of Culture did, the bidding process certainly did, was to remind people what we have in this city. And it's not just the big stories. It's not just the Tate and the museums and the biennial, great that those are. It's also about the brilliant community arts that have happened really consistently here. The Blackie, for example, in Liverpool was one of the first places to do community arts. It's a pioneer in that work, and all of that had sort of been forgotten. And my learning after being 30 years here is that you've got to keep reinforcing the narrative, because there's always someone else who wants to take it away from you. And I think what we've done in Liverpool is managed to keep reinforcing that. And that is great PR, but it's also real, and you can't do it unless there's real truth to it, I don't think, either.
So Capital of Culture, tell us about that. So that's when you joined the council, isn't it?
No, I think I joined to do the bid. So I was working for, I think it was like it was an arm of the council when we had lots of European money, and we were doing really innovative things in communities that were about kind of engaging, especially for me, it was engaging young people who'd never been in youth, had never been in employment, had been on the edge of everything. And we did this project called Art Skills that was based in Dingle and Toxteth and in Speak in Liverpool. And it was all connected with the Education Action Zone and the partnerships that were based there at those times. And what we did, especially in Speak, I think, was look again at culture being at the heart of that. The people who were running the partnership at the point really got that. We did massive festivals. And then when the call came, I'd heard a rumour that we were bidding for Capital of Culture. And I was very tenacious at that point and kept writing to whoever would listen that I wanted to be part of it. And then we went, myself and the director at the time, Charlie Parker, who was director of the partnership, went to the city council to say, look, we really want to help. We've done this in Speak. This is what we've done in Speak. It's been great. You know, can we not mirror that as part of this Capital of Culture bid that you're trying to put in? And we were kind of a bit dismissed, if I'm honest. And it was like, go back to Speak and just carry on doing what you're doing there. And then they brought in a guy called Sir Bob Scott to lead the bid. And he came out to Speak to see what we were doing and fell in love with it. I didn't, however, like him very much at the time. So then I refused to go to do the bid because I was like, he's from Manchester. He doesn't know what he's doing. And then he just really got it. And then kept coming and saying, will you come and work with us on the bid? We want to do a big participation part. You've got to remember now, you'd think that was just like absolutely a big tick. But then it was very much seen, Capital of Culture, as a marketing tool. So no other places were going really deep into communities and working with communities to kind of make that their bid. They just weren't. It wasn't done then. Now, of course, you've absolutely got to do that. So, but he really understood the value of that and he kept coming back. And in the end, I was like, oh, okay, then I'll come, like, however old I was, thinking I was the bee's knees, and then came in. And then that's how we kind of mirrored what we'd done in Speak and Dingle and Garston with the whole Capital of Culture and did this programme called Creative Communities, which was the absolute point of difference between any other city that bid. And even now, I still look back on those projects, 25 years later, and some of them are still going on. But it was truly transformational. And the team that we brought around us to do that, they were all community workers. Some of them are still with me, Alicia Smith, could we call out to her. But we just got it. And I think that for me has kind of informed the whole programme post the bid as well, which is a very long time ago now.
It's like a blueprint then for others to follow. That was like new at the time.
Oh, that absolutely was. And it wasn't, in a funny way, it's similar to Eurovision. Eurovision had never done community outreach work the way that we did it, or education work. We always thought everyone did that now, but big events still, some of them don't think they just come in and do the event and go. And we've never done that. And we've not done it for 26 years. So it's been a real learning point for us. But I'm really proud of the work that we did in Speak, and I'm really proud that kind of template carried on through and is still carrying on through now, really.
I remember the partnership because we did work for them, and I remember when it ended, it was a very unusual end of term party that Charlie Parker organised, and it was a marquee with lots of community groups. Entertainment.
No, I did that. Yes. He did not organise it, just to be really clear, Charlie, if you're listening.
And at that time, it was a very unusual way to end. I remember we also worked on Kensington Regeneration. They ended it with a big, lavish dinner in Liverpool Cathedral, which was absolutely amazing with all the stakeholders there, and the community were there as well. But the one in Speak was really grassroots.
Oh yeah, we had a choir and everything. I mean, yeah, it was the 400th anniversary of Speak Hall. So we treated that like it was a proper international festival in Speak at the time. We brought loads of artists to it. I've got the programme still in work actually, and we did that really properly. And it was gorgeous. We did a big show at the Unity called The Weather People. Like, we just did absolutely loads, and the partnership really got the fact that culture will change the pride that people had in that place as well at the time. But again, it's very initiative based, isn't it? And that's also something I just think, oh, come on, we're now trying to reinvent all of that 25 years later. Whereas if some of those initiatives had carried on and been funded, some of the areas in Liverpool wouldn't be in the position that they're in now, which have gone back, or, you've got to do long term. And a lot of those partnership projects were very short term and very, through no one's fault, because the European money ran out. But then again, I think now we're trying to reinvent that. Sure Starts is another one, because that was incredible in Speak also as well.
Yeah. And in Kensington.
And in
We're
Kensington.
still there.
It's still there. But again, imagine where we'd be if we carried on some of those initiatives that were there in the late 90s and we carried on investing in those communities in a consistent way with, resources that you need to invest in them.
Yeah, we could go on about that.
We could, but not in Europe anymore. So obviously that's probably, all that's gone.
Before we go back to events and also the culture, the general sense, just about you personally, you mentioned you were doing youth community work, but how did you get into it? So you weren't born in Liverpool. How did you come to Liverpool and how did you get into the arts?
So I came to Liverpool. So I'm the first person in my family to go to university. So, but my grandma comes from Liverpool. So she came from back Salisbury Street off Scotland Road. And she came back here, interestingly, to have my dad during the war because she wanted him to come from somewhere, somewhere that was a chief out was important. So Liverpool was always part of her storytelling that she told us. And we had lots of relations here at that point in time. So Liverpool was the first choice for me to go to as someone who was quite nervous about leaving home at that particular point and hadn't got that great thing of having loads of people who'd been to university. So had none of that. So I came here and it's very similar to where I come from. So I come from a town called Corby in Northamptonshire, which is the steelwork town. So the steelworks ended in the 70s, early 80s and went through the same decline that Liverpool had gone through. But that spirit was always still there. So I felt very at home here in that, in that way. And I just fell in love with the place. I made great friends. I went to John Moore's, randomly got into drama, even though I'd never done it in school, but they were having so much more fun than we were in English that we just thought, right, I'll do that then. And then directed, so went to work at the Playhouse Neverman as assistant director, but wrote. I was really tenacious. I just kept writing to people until when the days when you wrote to people, until they
pen and paper.
Oh, pen and paper, yeah. But my friend posted it. Interestingly, I didn't have the confidence to post it, so she posted it for me, and that's how I got to do the Everman Playhouse stuff. And then I did youth theatre, so I got in to do youth theatre through that, and then absolutely loved that and loved community arts work, and felt much more comfortable doing that. And then if you think about going to Speak. When I worked in Speak and in the Dingle, it wasn't just doing community arts work. It was actually looking at the regeneration of a place and putting culture at the heart of that. And then again, that fed the bid and it fed all the work, that we've done in the last 20 years since then. So it was an odd route to take, but there were so many opportunities in Liverpool as well and so much spirit in the place that it's been an absolute joy. And especially those early days, getting into work in those areas was just incredible, brilliant.
So with your tenacity, you got on the group putting together the bid for Capital of Culture.
I did.
And what was that like?
Well, oh God, it was very there's lots of big personalities involved. I always say this though, and again, hindsight is lovely, isn't it, when you're a bit calmer and a bit older. Bidding is the best thing. Bidding is just incredible because it's about galvanising people. And you've got to remember at that point in time, there was a new administration in the city council. The city had been called the basket case of local authorities. It was on its knees in terms of investment, in terms of the way the city felt, the reputation it had internationally, not internationally, the reputation it had nationally. It was just horrible that people talked about Liverpool the way they talked about it. I mean, it's disgusting, really. And there was the whole thing about that we know now about managed decline. So it was a fight for us that were doing the bid. And it was just like a mission. It felt like a mission, but it didn't feel like a mission just by... And I think what the council was really clever about is I live here and I'm really passionate about the place. But it mixed people who live here with people who don't. And that, at that point as well, in the maturity of the city, that was a tough decision because Bob Scott was from Manchester, let's be really clear. And this is like 25 years ago when outsiders as well, who weren't Scouts, it was pretty tough for them. But the council were very brave about who they brought in to do. They brought the best people together to do the bids. They had a mixture of local grown talent and the mixture of really experienced people to put the bid together. And what happened was that magic when everyone wants it. I mean, I remember, everyone being so passionate about it. I remember walking my daughter who was like 2. Was she even born? No, she was born. She was 2. I had a pram. So I remember exactly where I was at Sefton Park and someone coming and having a real go at me on a Sunday about something that hadn't gone in the bid. But it was that passion that everyone had I mean, I didn't really like it on a Sunday when I was being a 2-year-old, but it was that passion that everyone had about bidding and wanting to win, and it felt like, well, it was true. The whole city wanted it.
It felt like the biggest thing ever to happen in Liverpool.
It did, and it marked.
Wow.
I think if it marked a real moment of change, because from that point on, and it was very traumatic between bid and delivery. Oh my God! I mean, if I could write a book, some of the things that went on, and they're very well publicised. If anyone wants to Google them, you know, the fallouts, the walking off stage left, the political fallouts, the setbacks, all of that created a great drama. But actually, 2008 was a great deadline. So Liverpool won, the arena, all those things we absolutely take for granted now as a city in terms of how it looks and feels. They weren't there before. Would they have been there without that deadline, question mark? If you talked to Grosvenor, probably not, because you'd have slipped into recession, things would have got held up, they would have everything drifts, doesn't it? But if you've got to get a show on, there is absolutely nothing quite like it. And obviously it was my sort of first really, really big job. So I was very caught up in the emotions of it. I wouldn't be quite the same now, because you kind of go, you've got to get to the end. Whereas at the time, I mean, everyone who's listening to this who remembers the Big Dig, I mean, we used to read about what was happening with Culture Company on the front page of the Daily Post before we knew about it. I mean, it was the most high profile locally, actually, really, really contentious time, I think, for the city, because everything was played out in the media, which was really tough if you're working on something. But the end game was worth it, wasn't it? I mean, where would we be if we hadn't had 2008?
I don't know. I mean, for me, it's a landmark, and I wasn't involved other than going to see some fantastic events. So that was a catalyst, wasn't it, surely?
Oh, gosh, yeah. And Phil Redmond, I'm working with Phil Redmond actually at the moment on City of Culture, and it's just so lovely working with him and keeping that contact for the last 20 years, because he came in, Fiona Gasper and myself, we'd done the program. The thing that I was always really confident about was the program. Remember, this is a cultural program, so all the noise around it just was noise. It's great for me saying that now. I didn't feel like that at the time, but the program was always really strong. So the work that we'd done, whether that was in the communities or whether it was the big set pieces that cultural organisations did or the big outdoor events, we knew that was groundbreaking for any place. We just knew it. We were really confident on it. But we weren't very eloquent in talking about it, Fiona and I, at that point in time. We you know, it was 20 years ago. We were younger. So Phil came in, and Phil did that brilliant thing of going, right, all national media who've been basically slagging us off for the last 10 years, you don't want to come, don't bother. We're having a party. And if you don't want to be here, you can you know, don't come. It's a Scouse wedding. We've all fallen. He's just brilliant. And he just stood on the steps of the arena. And again, I really remember the moment where he just went, we're having a Scouse wedding. He said, it'll be the best wedding in the world, but if you're not interested, don't bother coming. And it literally changed the narrative like that. And I remember getting in a taxi, and the taxi driver didn't know who I was. And he went, Phil's on, our Phil's on board now. It'll all be fine. And I went, yeah, it really will. So he can do all that bit, and we can just get on with doing the programme. And it was just, and I think he always says, and I agree with him, when we did the Nativity, which was the BBC show just before the year. And it's the first sort of big outdoor event that we'd done. And you can feel the city's shoulders relax. And suddenly everyone went, we're up for this. Then we knew when we opened 2008 with Ringo on Star on the Roof, and now he's in charge of that event. Glad there wasn't social media at that point in time. Just because it was bonkers. But it was a massive statement to the world about Liverpool.
Describe that. Not
not everyone's probably alive when it happened. I'm just looking at you 20-year-olds. So we put on 2 events for the opening of Capital Culture. One was opening the arena with The Greatest Show on Earth, which was the story of Liverpool, which Jane Casey and a guy called Nigel Jameson directed, and it was wonderful. It was just all the songs that you know from this city, but coupled with the story of its regeneration, and Liverpool's rise and fall. Brilliant. And everyone always says the first half was just the most moving thing in the world, and the second half was just the best pop show, which kind of is the arena all over, isn't it? But then the outdoor event we did on the coldest day in January, and it had been like gales leading up to it. And so we couldn't even do a technical rehearsal until the night before. So we were up all the night before, did the technical rehearsal. And then the day, we had Ringo Starr on the roof. And I was like, again, you know.
On the roof of the...
On the roof, no, the roof of St. George's Hall.
Roof of St. George's Hall.
And I again, you think about your naivety at that point, and that's, age however old I was, going, why are we doing the Beatles again? Rah, 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 rah. It should all be about new talent and new bands and new everything that's coming, and it should be about all of that. And then Jane Casey, who is an absolute hero of mine, say, Claire, don't be so naive. If we've got a Beatle, we've got to. I was like, oh, all right then, and went all huffy and did something there. And then I saw the American trucks coming in for the outside broadcast, and we couldn't get we couldn't get down the side of the plateau with the amount of media that we had for that opening. And that was to do with the fact that it was Liverpool. Everyone was waiting for us to fail, which is basically what a journalist said at one point, who was sitting right in front of me. But also, it was a Beatle on the roof of St George's Hall. And it was just... And then at 6:30, I did a media interview, and there was just no one behind me. And I just thought, oh my God, we've done all this, and this is what I always said, no one's coming. There is nobody going to come. This is just awful. And then by I think we had to start 15 minutes early because there was too many people on the plateau. So, and my husband now, it wasn't my husband then, couldn't get anywhere near. He was halfway up London Road and just couldn't get any further. So yeah, people came, and it would just start. And then from then on, a guy called Tommy Coldsbank said to me once when he met me in the park, didn't shout at me, met me in the park and just went, it's like Glastonbury. It's like Glastonbury every day. And that's kind of what it felt.
I love that.
That's exactly what it felt like. It was an absolute year of just everything going on everywhere.
I'm trying really hard to get a ticket. And not always succeeding, I remember so well. It was an incredible time. And there have been so many other things, of course. Giants, as you say, tall ships, River of Light, all the world sporting championships we bring here, the netball, the golf, and a bit of world-class football as well. But
can't take responsibility for that, really not. Nothing to do with me.
Yeah, I know you will get asked this all the time in any interview, but do you have a particular highlight or a particular thing that you love to see happening in Liverpool?
I think you never enjoy events that you do yourself. You just don't, because they are really hard, and you're always kind of on edge until they're finished, and you never see the good of them, which is a real again, it's all about learning, isn't it? I wish I'd done that. I wish I'd kind of stood on my opening event at Capital Culture and loved every second of it, but I was kind of quite relieved when it was over. And it's that thing about relief when they're over rather than enjoying them at the time, and that's the job. That's the job that we do. I think the thing that there's loads of events that I love. Some of them are much smaller, and some of them I'm really proud of. I'm really proud, for example, of the Hillsborough Vigils that we did, for very different reasons. But for me, they were the most important message that we could send out to the world about that. And if anything had gone wrong in those events, if the sound had got, just those things, it would have just been awful. And for me, doing those in this city was a real privilege and an honour. But we wanted to get it right, the messaging right, and I still see the banners that we did. That still is is a real image for that, and I'm really, 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 really proud of that. And we worked very closely with the families on that. But that's one extreme, and then the other extreme for me was Giants. So that I really, really enjoyed the last Giant show because I knew it was the last, and it was the last.
That, did you?
Oh, I really got my head around the fact we're never going to do this again. They're retiring, and we threw everything at it. I mean, every Giant that Royal Deluxe had ever done appeared on that show. And there was a moment where no one knew the girls. People probably won't even remember this because, again, it's 2018. Was it 2018 we did this?
Doesn't seem that long
ago, but it was pre-COVID. And the girl appeared because no one knew she was there. And then we brought her out of not police head, but the army place on by Deli Fonseca on the Dock Road. And I was in the audience, and you just heard that ripple, like she's here, going through the whole crowd. And I'll never forget that. And I'll never forget I'm getting emotional, actually. You're getting emotional.
I'm feeling goosebumps.
I'll never forget walking with Giants, because I think they represented the best of this city. And when you saw the audiences, families, generations come out for it, there's nothing like it. And that I really enjoyed that. That's probably the last one was probably my favourite event. And of course, I forgot Eurovision in this. Everyone always talks about Eurovision was very different, because Eurovision, we just had literally not gritted teeth, that's the wrong expression. We were so determined that we were just going to do it and enjoy it and really do it really well. It was a very different emotion. But Giants, I knew we'd never do again.
We're going to pause there and return to Claire in part 2. There are lots more fascinating stories to come. We couldn't fit them all into one episode. Next time, we'll get the inside track on how Eurovision was delivered by Liverpool on behalf of Ukraine, with Ukrainian organisers joining planning calls while sheltering in bomb-proof bunkers. Plus, we'll hear how Claire's team is helping to spread the culture magic across all parts of Liverpool city region during 2026, and how all these great events impact on the spirit of the city. You'll find a link on the podcast page. Till then, goodbye for now, and I hope you'll join us in part 2.